The night Hannah Miller lost her job, she gave away the last warm thing she had. And she had no idea the stranger on that rain-soaked bench was the man who could either destroy what was left of her life or finally help her rebuild it. Rain slides down the glass door of Rosewood Bakery in thin silver lines as Hannah stands behind the counter, still wearing her flour-dusted apron, still smelling like cinnamon, butter, and blueberry filling, still trying to understand the words her manager has just said. "We are closing early. Not just tonight. For good." The rent went up again. The landlord would not negotiate. And by morning, the little bakery on West Madison Street, the place where Hannah has worked double shifts for almost 4 years, will become another dark window with a paper notice taped to the door. She nods because there is nothing else to do. She smiles because the older woman beside her is crying, and someone has to look steady. But inside, something small and tired folds in half. At 28, Hannah is used to hard days. She is used to counting quarters at the laundromat, stretching $12 of groceries across 3 dinners, and pretending her cracked phone screen does not bother her because rent matters more than glass. But this bakery was more than a job. It was the closest thing she had to the bakery her mother once owned before the old neighborhood changed, before the building was sold, before Rose Miller packed away her recipes in a cardboard box and tried to pretend her heart was not breaking. Hannah wipes the last table slowly. The chairs are already upside down. The display case is almost empty except for 6 small blueberry rolls that did not sell during the storm. Her manager presses them into a brown paper bag and says, "Take them, honey. You should not walk home hungry." Hannah wants to laugh at that because hunger is simple. Hunger is something she can understand. Losing another piece of her mother's world is harder. By the time she steps outside, Chicago is all wet pavement and yellow streetlights. The kind of cold spring rain that slips under your collar no matter how tightly you pull your coat. The wind pushes against her with sharp little hands, and her flats splash through puddles as she heads toward the bus stop. The bus is 23 minutes late. Of course it is. Her umbrella broke last week, so she holds the bakery bag against her chest like it might keep her warm. Then she sees him. At first, he is only a shape on the bench across from the small park, a man sitting under the bare branches of an elm tree, shoulders bent, rain darkening the expensive wool of his overcoat. He is not sleeping. He is not scrolling through a phone. He is just sitting there, perfectly still, staring at the ground like there is an answer written somewhere between his polished shoes and the wet concrete. Hannah slows down. Something about him feels wrong. Not dangerous, not dramatic, just deeply alone. Rich people are supposed to have places to go, she thinks. Warm cars, high windows, people waiting. But this man looks like he has walked out of a beautiful life and found nothing inside it. She should keep moving. Her socks are wet, her job is gone, and tomorrow morning she needs to start calling every cafe within 5 miles. But then the man presses one hand over a small brown notebook in his lap, and his fingers tremble just enough for her to notice. Hannah looks at the bus stop, then back at him. The rain keeps falling. Finally, she crosses the path and stops at the other end of the bench. "Is anyone sitting here?" she asks softly. The man looks up as if her voice has pulled him from somewhere far away. He is older than her, maybe early 40s, with tired blue eyes, rain on his lashes, and a face too controlled to be peaceful. For a second, he seems unsure how to answer a normal question. Then he shakes his head. "No, go ahead." His voice is low, careful, almost empty. Hannah sits, leaving a respectful space between them. Neither of them speaks. Cars hiss by on the wet street. Somewhere nearby, a train rumbles over the tracks. She opens the paper bag, takes out one blueberry roll, then hesitates before offering it to him. He looks at it like she has handed him something impossible. "I am not asking for anything," he says. "I know," Hannah replies. "That is why I am offering." He studies her then, really studies her, the soaked ends of her blonde hair, the flower on her sleeve, the tired kindness she has not yet learned to hide. Slowly, he takes the roll. "Thank you," he says, and the words sound unfamiliar in his mouth. Hannah gives a small shrug. Some nights are easier when you do not have to sit alone. The man lowers his eyes to the pastry in his hand, and for one brief moment, his expression cracks. Not enough for most people to notice. Enough for Hannah. "What is your name?" she asks. He pauses, his fingers tightening around the brown notebook. "Ethan," he says. "Just Ethan." Hannah smiles faintly. "I am Hannah. Nice to meet you, just Ethan." A quiet breath leaves him, almost a laugh, but it does not quite make it. He breaks the blueberry roll in half and tastes it like he has forgotten food can be warm, sweet, simple. Hannah looks out at the street, unaware that inside the notebook on his lap is a list of names, old addresses, closed businesses, and unpaid debts no bank statement could measure. She does not know the first name on that list belongs to her dead mother's bakery. She does not know Ethan Caldwell owns the company that took it away. And Ethan, sitting beside her in the rain with blueberry on his fingers and guilt pressing against his ribs, does not yet know that the woman sharing his bench is about to become the one person he cannot lie to without losing himself completely. For a long minute after Hannah says her name, Ethan Caldwell cannot answer with anything honest. The rain taps against the leaves above them, gathers on the edge of the bench, and runs in thin streams toward the gutter. Hannah sits beside him with her hands wrapped around the paper bakery bag, trying to make herself smaller against the cold, while Ethan stares at the half-eaten blueberry roll in his hand like it has become evidence in a trial he never meant to attend. He knows her name. Not her face, not her voice, not the way she tucks wet strands of blonde hair behind her ear when she is nervous, but her name. Miller. He saw it less than 2 hours ago, printed on the 4th page of an internal settlement report he was never supposed to find. Rose Miller Bakery. West Loop Relocation Zone. Complaint unresolved. Compensation disputed. Property cleared for Caldwell Properties Phase 1. The words had looked clean on paper, neat and professional, but now they have a daughter sitting beside them, breathing in the cold, sharing the last food from a bakery that has just closed its doors. Ethan clears his throat, forcing his eyes toward the street. Long night? He asks. Hannah gives a small laugh without much humor in it. You could say that. I just found out the bakery is shutting down. Rent went up too high. Again. I am sorry, Ethan says, and the words feel smaller than they should. She shrugs, but her chin trembles for half a second before she looks away. It happens. That is what everyone says, right? Neighborhood changes. Old places disappear. People move on. But people do not really move on. They just learn to walk past the empty windows. Ethan closes his hand around the notebook until the edges press into his palm. He should tell her right then. He should say, my company might be part of why your mother lost everything. He should say, I signed papers I did not read closely enough, trusted executives I should have questioned, and built towers over stories I never stopped to hear. But he does not. Cowardice does not always look like running. Sometimes it looks like sitting very still and pretending silence is kindness. Hannah turns toward him, studying the way his expensive coat has soaked through at the shoulders. What about you? She asks. Why are you sitting out here in the rain? Ethan almost says business. Almost says meetings. Almost says nothing that would matter to someone like you. Instead, the truth slips out in a shape he does not expect. I found out I might not be the man I thought I was. Hannah does not laugh. She does not ask for details. She only nods slowly, as if she knows what it feels like to discover a crack inside yourself and wonder how long it has been there. That is a hard thing to find out, she says. Ethan looks at her. Most people in his world would lean forward now, hungry for scandal. They would want names, numbers, headlines, something they could use. Hannah only breaks another roll in half and places it between them on the damp bench like a quiet truce. My mom used to say guilt can either bury you or wake you up, she says. I hated that when I was younger. It sounded too simple. Now I think she was probably right about most things. Your mother sounds wise, Ethan says softly. She was. Hannah smiles, and for the first time that night, warmth reaches her eyes. She owned a bakery once, a real one, not the little place where I work tonight. Rose Miller Bakery. Best blueberry rolls in Chicago, at least according to every old man who came in pretending he was only buying one for his wife. Ethan's breath catches so quietly that only he hears it. The name lands between them harder than thunder. Hannah continues, unaware. It was on Halstead, near the old train line. We lived upstairs. When I was little, I thought the whole building smelled like sugar and coffee because Mom loved us so much that even the walls learned how to bake. Then the area got bought up. New plans, new investors, new everything. She fought for a while, but fighting takes money, and we did not have much. Ethan cannot look at her now. He looks at the pavement, where rain breaks the reflection of a passing taxi into gold pieces. How old were you? He asks. 14, Hannah says. Old enough to remember every detail. young enough to think someone would fix it if it was unfair. Her voice stays gentle, and somehow that makes it worse. Ethan has sat in boardrooms where men shouted across polished tables about losses bigger than entire neighborhoods. He has watched stock prices fall, deals collapse, partners betray him with smiles. None of it ever made him feel like this. This is not business pressure. This is a human cost with wet hair, tired eyes, and flour on her sleeve. His phone buzzes inside his coat. Once, twice, then again. He knows who it is without checking. Victor Hayes has been calling since Ethan walked out of the private archive room with the brown notebook under his arm. Victor, his chief financial officer, the man who told him old relocation files were routine, clean, fully resolved. The man who said digging through the past was bad leadership. Ethan ignores the call. Hannah notices, but says nothing. Instead, she pulls her cream-colored knit scarf from her neck and holds it out. "You are shivering," she says. Ethan almost smiles at the absurdity of it. He owns a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. He owns cars he barely drives, suits that cost more than Hannah probably makes in a month, and a company with his name carved into stone above its headquarters. Yet this woman, who has just lost her job, is offering him warmth. "I cannot take that," he says. "Sure you can. You just have to give it back someday." Her tone is light, but her eyes are serious. Ethan takes the scarf because refusing feels almost disrespectful. It is soft, handmade, faintly scented with vanilla and rain. The bus finally appears at the corner, headlights blurred in the storm. Hannah stands, gathering the bakery bag. "Well, just Ethan. I hope whatever truth found you tonight does not get the final word." She steps toward the curb, then glances back with a small, tired smile. Sometimes the truth hurts because it is asking you to become better. The bus doors sigh open. Hannah climbs aboard, drops her fare, and disappears behind fogged glass. Ethan remains on the bench with her scarf in his hands, the notebook on his lap, and her mother's name burning through every page he has not yet had the courage to open again. For the first time in years, he has everything a man could buy and not one thing that can save him from what he now knows. By the time Hannah reaches her apartment, the rain has softened into a mist, and the city looks like it has been rubbed blurry by tired hands. Her building sits above a closed dry cleaner on a side street in Pilsen, 3 stories of old brick, narrow stairs, and radiators that hiss like they are arguing with the walls. She climbs to the 3rd floor with wet shoes and a paper bag pressed to her ribs, careful not to wake Mrs. Alvarez in 3B, who works mornings at the hospital cafeteria and leaves a plastic grocery bag of canned soup outside Hannah's door whenever she thinks Hannah looks too thin. Inside, Hannah's apartment is small enough that she can stand in the kitchen and reach the edge of the bed with one hand, but she has made it gentle. A thrift store lamp with a crooked shade, a blue mug filled with wooden spoons, a framed photograph of her mother standing in front of Rose Miller Bakery, smiling under a striped green awning, her blonde hair tied back with a red ribbon, flour on her cheek, pride in her eyes. Hannah sets the bakery bag beside the frame and touches the glass with 2 fingers. "I lost another one, Mom," she whispers. The words barely leave her mouth before her throat tightens. She takes off her damp coat, hangs it over the chair, and realizes her cream-colored scarf is gone. For a second, panic flashes through her. Then she remembers Ethan, the bench, his hands closing around the soft knit like he did not understand why anyone would give something away without asking for a receipt. A small smile appears before she can stop it. "Keep warm. Just Ethan," she murmurs. But the smile fades when she sits at the table and opens the envelope her manager gave her. Final paycheck. $218.40 after taxes. Not enough for rent. Not enough for groceries and the overdue electric bill. Not enough to pretend life will behave if she just stays kind. She should be angry. Some nights she is. Angry at landlords who raise rent like they are moving pieces on a game board. Angry at men in suits whose decisions become eviction notices for people they never meet. Angry that her mother spent years building something sweet, only to watch strangers discuss it in words like acquisition, redevelopment, and market value. But anger has never fed Hannah. It has never paid a deposit or reopened a door. So she does what she has always done. She opens her mother's old recipe box. The cards are yellowed at the edges, some written in blue ink, some in pencil, all in Rose Miller's careful hand. Blueberry rolls with lemon glaze, honey oat bread, cinnamon coffee cake, At the very back is a folded napkin from the original bakery, the logo faded but still readable. Rose Miller Bakery, fresh bread, warm hearts. Hannah presses it flat on the table. When she was little, Saturday mornings meant standing on a stool beside her mother, measuring flour while regulars came in from the cold. Mr. Bell from the hardware store always wanted extra glaze. The two sisters from the flour shop split one roll and argued over who got the bigger half. Her mother knew every name, every birthday, every quiet sadness people carried through the door. She used to say a bakery was not really about bread. It was about giving people one small place where the world did not feel so sharp. Then the letters started coming. First polite, then firm, then final. Rose tried to understand the legal language, tried to call offices where assistants transferred her to other assistants, tried to sit in meetings where nobody looked her in the eye long enough to see the person behind the papers. Hannah remembers one afternoon most clearly. Her mother stood in the empty dining area after closing, holding a folder against her chest, staring at the walls as if she was trying to memorize them. "We will be all right, sweetheart," she said, but her voice had already stopped believing it. They moved out 3 months later. Rose found work baking for other people, but a person can lose more than a storefront. She lost her rhythm, her confidence, the easy laugh that used to fill the kitchen before sunrise. Hannah never blamed her for fading. She blamed the invisible machine that swallowed small places and left glass towers behind. Across town, Ethan does not go home either. His driver waits outside the park with the heat running, but Ethan sits in the back seat without removing Hannah's scarf, the brown notebook open on his knees. Victor has left 7 messages. The last one is short and cold. "Do not do anything emotional." Ethan almost laughs. Emotional. That is what men like Victor call truth when it threatens a balance sheet. He turns the page and sees it again. Rose Miller Bakery. Complaint unresolved. Owner deceased. Daughter listed as dependent at time of relocation. Hannah Miller. His thumb stops under her name. The woman on the bench is no longer a stranger, and the past is no longer a file. It has an apartment with a leaking window. It has wet flats by the door. It has a recipe box, a missing scarf, and a voice gentle enough to offer comfort to the man connected to her pain. Ethan closes his eyes, but there is no darkness deep enough to hide in now. By morning, Hannah will start searching for another job, unaware that the man she fed in the rain is searching for every document that explains how her mother's dream was taken and why his signature sits at the bottom of the page. The next evening, Hannah returns to the same park because her bus route leaves her no better choice, or at least that is what she tells herself. She has spent the day walking almost 3 miles from cafe to cafe with a folder of resumes tucked under her arm, smiling until her cheeks ache, hearing the same soft answers dressed in different words. "We are not hiring right now. Leave your number. We will call if something opens." By sunset, her feet hurt, her coat still smells faintly of rain, and the city feels too wide for one tired woman carrying hope in a paper folder. She expects the bench to be empty. Instead, Ethan is there. Same dark overcoat, same quiet posture. Only this time he is holding 2 paper coffee cups, and her cream-colored scarf is folded neatly beside him. Hannah stops beneath the street lamp, surprised enough to forget the cold. "You came back," she says. Ethan stands too quickly, as if he has been caught doing something foolish. "I owed you a scarf, and maybe a coffee. It is black, but there is cream and sugar in the little bag. I did not know how you take it." Hannah takes the scarf first, brushing her fingers over the knit as if checking that it made it through the night safely. Then she accepts the coffee. 2 sugars, a little cream, she says. "Lucky guess." "Not luck," Ethan replies, then catches himself. "I mean, most people like coffee that way when it is this cold." Hannah looks at him for a second, amused, but she lets the awkwardness pass. They sit. The coffee is cheap, probably from the 24-hour deli near the corner, but it warms her hands, and for a few minutes, that is enough. Ethan asks about her job search. Hannah tells him about the bakery closing, the cafes with handwritten signs that somehow still are not hiring, the manager who looked at her resume and asked if she had experience with upscale customers, as if kindness needs a dress code. Ethan listens without interrupting. He is good at listening, too good, like every word has weight. "What about you?" Hannah asks after a while. "Did your truth get any easier by morning?" Ethan looks down at the path where fallen leaves stick to the wet pavement. "No," he says. It got names. Hannah does not understand, but she hears the strain under his voice. Names make things harder, she says. Before my mom lost the bakery, it was easy for people to talk about the neighborhood like it was just property. Blocks, units, lots. Then she would point to the window and say, "That is Mr. Bell from the hardware store. That is Donna who buys rolls for her sister. That is George who comes in when he misses his wife." Suddenly, it was not property anymore. It was people. Ethan grips his cup so tightly the lid bends. Your mother did that? She did everything like that. Made the world personal. It was annoying when I was a teenager. Now I miss it. For the first time, Ethan smiles in a way that almost reaches his eyes. My father was the opposite, he says. He believed feelings were what people used when they had no leverage. That sounds lonely. It was efficient, Ethan says, then after a pause, lonely. The second night becomes a third, then a fourth. By the end of the week, the bench feels less like a place they happen to meet and more like a small room without walls, lit by street lamps and passing headlights. Hannah brings leftover pastries from a temporary morning shift she finds at a grocery store bakery 20 minutes away. Ethan brings coffee, sometimes tea, once a paper cup of chicken noodle soup when the wind comes hard off the lake and Hannah arrives shivering. He never mentions Caldwell Properties. He never mentions his penthouse, his driver, the assistant who keeps moving his evening calls, or Victor Hayes, who now sends messages with words like exposure, liability, and control. On the fifth night, Hannah tells Ethan about the red ribbon her mother used to wear in her hair. On the sixth, Ethan tells Hannah his mother died when he was in college, and his father responded by working 16-hour days, teaching him that grief could be outrun if a man moved fast enough. Did it work? Hannah asks. Ethan looks at the skyline beyond the trees, where glass towers glow above the older brick buildings. For a while, I thought it did. Then why are you here? She asks gently. He turns toward her. Because you sat down. The honesty hangs between them, fragile and warm. Hannah looks away first, not because she is uncomfortable, but because she feels something open in her chest that she has kept closed since her mother's funeral. She is not looking for romance. She is looking for a job, a way to pay rent, a way to keep 1 month from collapsing into the next. But Ethan's silence is becoming familiar. His careful kindness is becoming something she waits for before she admits she is waiting. On the seventh night, snow mixes with rain, thin and silver in the dark. Hannah brings 2 blueberry rolls she baked from her mother's recipe in her tiny apartment oven. They are uneven, a little too dark at the edges, but Ethan eats his slowly, like every bite matters. My mom would have charged you $3 and told you the burned corner builds character, Hannah says. Ethan laughs softly, and the sound surprises them both. Then his phone buzzes. This time Hannah sees the name on the screen before he turns it over. Victor Hayes. Something in Ethan's face closes. A business thing? She asks. Something like that. You never talk about work. Neither do you. I lost mine, remember? He nods, ashamed by the opening she does not know she has given him. Hannah studies him. The expensive coat, the careful watch half hidden beneath his sleeve, the way he seems both present and guarded. For one brief second, suspicion flickers, but she pushes it aside. Everyone has locked doors. She has a few herself. When her bus arrives, she stands and wraps the scarf around her neck. Same time tomorrow? She asks. Ethan wants to say yes. He wants one more night before the truth. One more cup of coffee. One more hour as just Ethan. Instead, he hears his own voice betray him. Same time. Hannah smiles and steps onto the bus, carrying warmth she does not know is borrowed from a lie. Ethan watches until the taillights vanish, then opens the brown notebook on his lap. Beneath Rose Miller's file, he has written one sentence in black ink. Tell Hannah before someone else does. The next morning, Ethan Caldwell walks into the 38th floor of Caldwell Properties with Hannah's words still sitting in his chest like a hand on his heart. The office is all glass, marble, and quiet money, high above Chicago, where the streets look clean because distance has a way of making every consequence look small. Assistants straighten as he passes. Executives stop mid-sentence. Everyone knows the look on his face, the one that usually means a deal is about to be cut open and examined from the inside. But this time, Ethan is not thinking about profit margins or zoning approvals. He is thinking about a girl on a park bench saying names make things harder. He enters his private office and closes the door before his assistant can remind him of the 9 o'clock investor call. On his desk, the brown notebook lies open beside a stack of copied documents from the archive. Rose Miller Bakery. Disputed compensation. Relocation notice. Signature authorization. Ethan reads the page again, even though he already knows the worst part. His own name is printed at the bottom, not in ink from his hand, but in a digital approval from his executive account, dated 8 years earlier, when he was expanding faster than he could breathe and trusting Victor Hayes with the details he called too small for vision. Too small. A bakery where a woman raised her daughter was too small. A block of working families was too small. The kind of place that smelled like sugar and coffee was too small. Ethan presses both hands to the desk and lowers his head. Then the door opens without a knock. Victor Hayes steps in wearing a gray suit, a silver tie, and the calm expression of a man who has never mistaken guilt for useful information. You missed the investor call, Victor says. Ethan looks up slowly. You approved a relocation settlement that was never paid correctly. Victor closes the door behind him. Good morning to you too. Do not do that. Do not make this casual. Ethan picks up the Miller file and drops it on the desk between them. Rose Miller Bakery. Tell me why her complaint was buried. Victor barely glances at it. Because it was old, emotional, and legally inconvenient. The words strike Ethan harder than a shout would have. Legally inconvenient, he repeats. Victor sighs, as if explaining whether to a child. Ethan, we were assembling land for one of the most important developments in the city. There were dozens of complaints. Most people complain when neighborhoods change. It does not mean the company did anything wrong. A woman lost her business. Her daughter lost her home. And the compensation was disputed until the file disappeared. Victor's eyes sharpen. You have been spending too much time in the archives. Or perhaps too much time somewhere else. Ethan goes still. What is that supposed to mean? It means one of my contacts saw you near Pilsen 3 nights this week. Sitting in a park with a blonde woman who works service jobs and carries bakery bags. Victor lets the silence stretch. I assume that is why this particular file has become suddenly important. Ethan feels something cold move through him. Stay away from her. I do not even know her, Victor says smoothly. But I know patterns. People learn a rich man's pain, then they learn his wallet. Be careful. Ethan steps around the desk, voice low and controlled. Do not reduce her to one of your calculations. Victor's smile fades. Then stop acting like a guilty teenager and start acting like the head of this company. If you reopen these files, every investor in that building across the river will question every deal we have closed in 10 years. The board will question your judgment. The press will call you careless. And if you publicly attach yourself to the Miller name, they will call her an opportunist before lunch. Ethan says nothing. That is the cruelty of Victor's warning. It is not empty. It is possible. In another part of the city, Hannah stands in the narrow hallway outside her apartment with an envelope in her hand and a roaring silence in her ears. The notice is printed in clean black letters, polite enough to be insulting. Her building has been sold. All tenants must vacate within 30 days for renovation and redevelopment. 30 days. She reads it twice, then a third time, as if the words might become kinder if she keeps looking. Mrs. Alvarez from 3B opens her door, holding the same notice, her face pale with worry. Did you get one too, honey? Hannah nods. The hallway suddenly feels smaller, the old carpet worn under their feet, the radiator clanking at the end like it is trying to speak for everyone who cannot afford a lawyer. The new owner is listed at the bottom through a property management company Hannah has never heard of, but the language feels familiar. Renovation. Opportunity. Market improvement. Words that sound clean until they enter your life carrying boxes. Hannah folds the notice carefully because if she crumples it, she might start crying and not stop. By evening, she almost does not go to the bench. She has spent hours searching rental listings where the cheapest studio is still hundreds of dollars too high, calling job postings that go straight to voicemail, and imagining her mother's recipe box packed into another cardboard box. But habit, loneliness, and something she refuses to name carry her back to the park. Ethan is already there, standing instead of sitting, his coat open against the cold, her cream scarf folded in his hands even though she has not lent it to him tonight. The moment he sees her face, he knows. What happened? He asks. Hannah tries to smile, but it breaks before it forms. My building was sold. 30 days to leave. Ethan's eyes close for 1 second too long. The past is no longer past. It has found her again. Hannah gives a small, tired laugh. Funny, right? My mom lost a bakery. I lose a bakery job. Now I lose an apartment. Maybe Chicago is just very committed to the theme. Ethan cannot breathe around the truth pressing against his ribs. He thinks of Victor, the new acquisition, the shell management company, the warning. Suddenly, the pattern is too perfect to be coincidence. Hannah sits on the bench and looks straight ahead. I am so tired of starting over because somebody with more money decides the ground under my feet is worth more without me on it. Ethan sits beside her, close enough to feel her hurt, not brave enough yet to deserve her trust. His phone buzzes with Victor's name. He does not answer. Hannah notices. Work again? She asks softly. Ethan looks at the glowing screen, then at the woman whose life is being cornered by the same machine carrying his name. Yes, he says, and his voice is almost gone. But I think it is time I stopped letting work hide behind other words. The invitation arrives the next morning in Hannah's email, tucked between job alerts, overdue bill reminders, and one polite rejection from a cafe that thanked her for her interest without ever calling her in. At first, she almost deletes it. The subject line says Caldwell Civic Renewal Gala, one-night catering staff needed, $28 an hour, formal uniform provided. $28 an hour is enough to make her stop breathing for a second. It is not a job. It is one shift. But one shift can buy groceries, refill her bus card, and keep the electric company quiet for another week. She clicks reply before pride can talk her out of survival. By 6 that evening, Hannah stands in the service entrance of the Caldwell Grand Hotel downtown, wearing a borrowed white shirt, black slacks, and shoes that pinch her toes but look professional under the ballroom lights. The hotel rises 20 stories above Michigan Avenue, all polished brass, cream marble, and chandeliers that scatter gold across the ceiling like captured sunlight. Everything smells expensive. White roses in glass vases, lemon oil on the floors, butter from the pastry kitchen. Hannah carries a silver tray of blueberry tartlets and tells herself this is only work. Smile. Serve. Leave. The ballroom is already full of men in tailored tuxedos and women in silk dresses, voices smooth and confident, laughter rising around the clink of champagne glasses. On the far wall, a massive screen shows sketches of new apartments, green walkways, rooftop gardens, and smiling families who look like they have never worried about rent in their lives. The words West Loop Renewal Initiative glow beneath the Caldwell logo. Hannah sees that logo and feels a strange pressure behind her ribs, though she cannot explain why. She moves between guests, offering tartlets, keeping her eyes lowered the way service workers learn to do in rooms where being noticed can become a problem. Then a woman near the stage says, "There he is." Hannah turns without meaning to. Across the ballroom, Ethan walks in wearing a black tuxedo, his hair neatly combed, his expression composed in a way she has never seen on the bench. People part for him before he even speaks. Cameras lift. Hands reach out. A man claps him on the shoulder as if greeting royalty. Hannah freezes with the tray balanced in both hands. For one impossible second, her mind refuses to connect the man under the elm tree with the man walking through applause. Then the screen behind the stage changes. His photograph fills it, sharp and elegant, beside the words Ethan Caldwell, founder and chief executive officer of Caldwell Properties. The tray dips. One tartlet slides toward the rim. Hannah catches it just in time, but her heart does not recover. Ethan looks up, and across the crowd, he sees her. The controlled mask falls from his face. Not much. Enough. Hannah takes one step backward. Suddenly, every coffee, every quiet conversation, every careful silence rearranges itself into something colder. Just Ethan was never just Ethan. He had a last name carved into buildings. A name printed on the kind of notices that changed lives. Before he can move toward her, Victor Hayes steps onto the stage with a polished smile and a microphone in his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us as Caldwell Properties continues its proud work of reshaping Chicago's future. Applause fills the room. Hannah barely hears it. Victor gestures toward the screen, and a new image appears. An old block near Halstead, digitally transformed into luxury apartments and retail space. Hannah's fingers go numb. She knows that corner. Even through the glossy rendering, even with the trees added and the sidewalks widened, she knows where her mother's striped green awning used to be. Victor continues, this site has long been part of the Caldwell vision, beginning with the original assembly phase 8 years ago. Tonight, we are proud to move that vision forward. The room applauds again. Hannah's tray slips lower. The blueberry tartlets tremble in their paper cups. Ethan is already crossing the room, pushing past greetings, ignoring a board member who reaches for his sleeve. Hannah, he says when he reaches her, voice low, urgent. Please. She looks at him as if he has become a stranger while standing right in front of her. Your company, she whispers. Ethan's silence answers too quickly. Her eyes shine, but she does not cry yet. Not here. Not in front of these people who are eating dessert beside a picture of her childhood being replaced by glass. Did you know my mother's name? She asks. Ethan opens his mouth, closes it. The pause is small, but it is enough to break something. Hannah nods once, slowly, as if she has received the final document in a case she never wanted to reopen. You did. Around them, a few guests turn to stare. Victor notices from the stage, his smile tightening. Ethan steps closer, careful, desperate. I found out recently. I was going to tell you. When? Hannah asks, her voice still soft, which somehow makes the words sharper. After another coffee? After another story about my mother? After I trusted you enough that the truth would hurt more? Ethan flinches, but he does not defend himself. She sets the tray on the nearest table with shaking hands. One tartlet tips over, blueberry filling staining the white linen like spilled ink. Cameras begin to tilt in their direction, curious, hungry. Victor's voice cuts through the room, overly bright. It seems we have a small service issue. Security, please assist. Ethan turns, and for the first time that night, the whole ballroom hears the steel in his voice. No one touches her. The room falls quiet. Hannah looks at him, shocked by the protection, wounded by everything that made it necessary. Then she backs away. I gave you my mother's recipe, she says. I gave you her name. Ethan's eyes redden, but he does not move. I know. Hannah picks up her coat from the service chair near the wall and walks toward the exit, past the chandeliers, past the guests, past the screen glowing with Caldwell's future built over Rose Miller's past. Ethan stands in the middle of the ballroom, famous, wealthy, surrounded by applause that has died into whispers, and realizes the darkest truth was never hidden in the notebook. It was the fact that Hannah had sat beside him in the rain, offered him warmth, and he had still let her walk into the truth alone. Outside the Caldwell Grand Hotel, the rain has stopped, but the sidewalk still shines under the streetlights like black glass. Hannah does not remember crossing the lobby. She does not remember the doorman asking if she is all right. She only remembers the way Ethan's face appeared on that giant screen, polished and powerful, while the place where her mother once baked blueberry rolls became a glowing promise for people who could afford new beginnings. She walks fast down Michigan Avenue with her coat clutched shut and her work shoes biting into her heels. Behind her, the hotel doors open. Hannah, please wait. Ethan's voice follows her into the cold, stripped of every boardroom edge, but she does not stop. Do not, she says, and the word comes out so quietly he almost misses it. He slows a few feet behind her, respecting the distance because it is the only decent thing left to offer. I should have told you. Hannah turns then, and the pain in her eyes makes him wish she had shouted. Yes, you should have. Not because you are rich. Not because you own some company. Because you sat beside me while I told you about my mother, and you let me think you were safe. Ethan absorbs it without defense. Cars pass. A couple under an umbrella glances over, then looks away. Hannah wipes her cheek with the back of her hand, angry at the tear more than at the cold. I kept thinking there was something sad about you, she says. I thought maybe you had lost someone. I did not know you were carrying the name of the company that helped take my mother from herself. Ethan's jaw tightens, but his voice stays low. I did not understand what happened then. I let other people handle the details. That is not an excuse. It is the truth, and it is terrible. Hannah gives a small, broken laugh. Details. That is what we always become to men in offices. Details. Units. Delays. Complaints. She steps back when he reaches instinctively toward the cream scarf around her neck, not to touch her, only because he remembers the night she gave it to him. The movement hurts them both. The hotel doors open again, and Victor appears under the awning with 2 security staff behind him and a public relations woman holding a phone to her ear. Ethan, Victor calls, sharp and controlled. We need you inside now. This is already spreading. Hannah looks past Ethan and sees one of the gala guests standing near the window with a phone raised. Another person whispers to another. In less than an hour, the clip is online. By midnight, the headline has been twisted into something cruel. Unknown catering worker confronts billionaire developer at charity gala. By morning, a second post claims Hannah planned the scene to embarrass Ethan. Someone finds an old photo of Rose Miller Bakery and calls it a sad story being used for attention. Mrs. Alvarez knocks on Hannah's door before 8 o'clock, holding her phone with worry in her eyes. "Honey, is this you?" Hannah looks at the screen and feels the floor tilt. There she is in her borrowed white shirt, face pale, tray shaking, while strangers argue about her life and comments that know nothing about her mother's hands, her tiny apartment, or the way grief can live for years under a polite smile. She calls 3 job listings that morning. 2 do not answer. The third says the position has been filled, though Hannah hears hesitation after she gives her name. Across the city, Ethan stands in his office watching the same clip without blinking. Victor stands near the windows, calm as ever. "This will pass if you let it," Victor says. "We frame it as an emotional misunderstanding. Offer her a private settlement. Make her sign something quiet." Ethan turns slowly. "You are done speaking about her." Victor's eyes narrow. "You cannot burn the company down over one woman with a bakery story." Ethan picks up the brown notebook from his desk. Not one woman. One family. Then another. Then another. He opens the notebook and reads the names he spent the night confirming. Small landlords. Shop owners. Tenants. People moved, delayed, underpaid, dismissed. His voice does not rise, but something final enters it. "Schedule a press conference for noon." Victor laughs once. "That would be reckless." "No," Ethan says. Reckless was signing approvals without seeing the people behind them. Reckless was calling harm a cost of progress. At noon, cameras fill the lobby of Caldwell Properties. Reporters expect a polished apology, maybe a donation, maybe a careful sentence about compassion. Instead, Ethan walks to the microphone with no prepared smile and the brown notebook in his hand. He gives his full name. He names the company. He names the project. Then he names Rose Miller Bakery. 8 years ago, he says, "My company benefited from a process that treated families as obstacles instead of people. I allowed that process because I did not ask enough questions. That failure belongs to me." Flashbulbs flicker. A reporter asks if the catering worker from the gala was targeting him. Ethan's eyes harden for the first time. "Her name is Hannah Miller. She did not know who I was when we met. She offered kindness to a stranger who had not yet earned the truth. She is not responsible for my company's past. I am." In her apartment, Hannah watches the live stream on Mrs. Alvarez's cracked tablet, arms folded tightly, breath caught in her throat. Ethan opens the notebook and lays it on the podium. "I will release the files," he says. "I will cooperate with an independent review. I will remove any executive who had claims or pressured families into silence. And I will begin restitution before this week ends, not as charity, but as debt." Victor, watching from the side of the lobby, goes pale beneath the perfect lights. Hannah does not forgive Ethan in that moment. Forgiveness is not a switch. But as she hears him say her mother's name in front of the whole city, not as a detail, not as a complaint, but as a person, something inside her that had been holding its breath for 14 years finally exhales. By sunset, the name Rose Miller is no longer buried in a forgotten file. It is on local news screens, in neighborhood group messages, on the lips of former tenants who begin calling reporters with stories that sound different but ache the same. A shoe repair shop that never received its promised relocation payment. A flower store forced to close after 3 generations. An elderly couple who signed papers they did not understand because a consultant told them it was the best offer they would ever get. Ethan listens to each story in a conference room that has always been used for deals, and for the first time, the room feels too clean for the truth being spoken inside it. Across the table, an independent attorney takes notes. Beside her, a community advocate asks for deadlines, not sympathy. Ethan gives them both. By Monday, he freezes the West Loop renewal initiative. By Tuesday, he removes Victor Hayes from every financial account and orders a full audit. By Wednesday, Victor resigns before the board can vote, leaving the building through a side entrance without cameras, without speeches, without the control he once treated like a birthright. But Ethan does not feel victorious. Justice does not arrive like applause. It arrives like paperwork, phone calls, uncomfortable meetings, and signatures that should have happened years ago. Every morning, he sits with the review team before sunrise. Every night, he returns to the bench in the park, not because he expects Hannah to come, but because it is the only place where he can remember the difference between being sorry and becoming different. He brings no coffee now, no gifts, only the brown notebook, updated with dates, actions, and names moved from the column marked unresolved to the column marked contacted. Hannah does not come for 9 nights. She watches from a distance once, standing beneath the bus shelter with her scarf wrapped tight around her neck, seeing him alone under the elm tree, head bowed over the notebook. She hates that the sight softens something in her. She hates that she still knows the shape of his loneliness. Forgiveness, she reminds herself, is not rent money. It is not a job. It is not her mother's bakery returned from the past. Then, on the 10th morning, a certified envelope arrives at her apartment. Inside is a letter from Caldwell Properties, but not the kind she remembers from childhood. This one contains copies of the audit findings, a formal apology naming Rose Miller directly, and a restitution proposal for the original property loss, unpaid compensation, interest, and damages. At the bottom is a separate document transferring the former bakery parcel back into a community trust, with Hannah Miller listed as the first eligible steward if she chooses to reopen a business there. Hannah sits at her kitchen table for a long time, the papers spread around her mother's recipe box. Mrs. Alvarez reads the numbers and starts crying before Hannah does. But Hannah does not sign. Not yet. 3 days later, she agrees to meet Ethan at the old Halstead corner where Rose Miller Bakery once stood. The building is gone, replaced by a temporary fenced lot and a faded development sign that now has a stop work notice taped across it. Ethan arrives alone, wearing a simple navy coat instead of a suit, his face tired in the pale afternoon light. He stops several feet away, letting Hannah decide the distance. "I did not ask you here to thank me," he says. "Good," Hannah replies. "Because I am not ready to do that." He nods. "You do not have to be." She holds up the envelope. "This is a lot of money. It is what was owed." It feels like guilt dressed up as a gift. Ethan takes that in, and the answer comes slowly, carefully, earned one word at a time. "Then do not take it from the man who loves you. Take it from the company that owed your mother justice before I ever met you." Hannah looks away because the word love lands too close to the part of her still bruised. Ethan does not reach for her. He does not explain how much he missed the bench, how many times he almost called, how every blueberry roll in the city now feels like a memory with a heartbeat. He simply opens the brown notebook and shows her the pages. Not just Rose Miller. Every name, every action beside it. Payment dates, legal contacts, mediation schedules. A line at the back reads, "No future project begins until every past claim is reviewed." Hannah runs her fingers over her mother's name, written by his hand, no longer hidden in corporate language. She thinks of Rose standing behind the counter with flour on her cheek, saying a bakery was one small place where the world did not feel so sharp. She thinks of the 14-year-old girl who believed fairness would come if adults only knew the truth. Maybe some adults knew and looked away. Maybe one of them finally looked back. "I cannot pretend this fixes everything," Hannah says. "I know. And I cannot promise I will trust you tomorrow just because you did the right thing today. I know that too." Her voice trembles, but it does not break. "If I reopen this place, it will not be because of you." Ethan's eyes shine, and he nods. "It should not be. It will be because my mother built something worth remembering." "Yes," he says softly. For the first time since the gala, Hannah really looks at him. Not the millionaire. Not the headline. Not even just Ethan from the bench. She sees a man standing in the ruins of his own pride, choosing not to hide behind it anymore. She folds the papers back into the envelope and presses them to her chest. "I will think about it," she says. It is not forgiveness. It is not love returned. But as Ethan watches her walk away from the empty lot with her mother's recipe box under one arm and justice finally in her hands, he understands it is the first honest door she has left open. 1 year later, the corner of Halstead and Madison smells like butter before sunrise again. Not the expensive kind of sweetness that belongs to hotel ballrooms or catered galas, but the kind that slips under a door, drifts down a sidewalk, and makes strangers slow their steps without knowing why. A green awning stretches over the front window, striped just like the old one in Hannah's favorite photograph, and painted across the glass in careful white letters is the name Rose Miller Bench Bakery. Inside, the walls are warm cream. The floorboards are restored oak, and behind the counter hangs the faded napkin from her mother's recipe box, framed beneath a simple line written in Hannah's hand: fresh bread, warm hearts. The first morning they open, Mrs. Alvarez arrives at 5:30 with flowers from the grocery store and cries before the lights are even on. Mr. Bell's son comes in at 6:15, holding an old photograph of his father in front of the original bakery. A woman Hannah does not know orders 2 blueberry rolls, then says her mother used to split one here with her sister every Friday after work. All morning, stories walk through the door, disguised as customers. Hannah listens to each one with flower on her sleeve and her mother's red ribbon tied around her blonde hair. She is tired by noon, but it is the kind of tired that means something has been built, not taken. Ethan does not come inside during the rush. He stands across the street for almost 20 minutes, hands in the pockets of a plain charcoal coat, watching people line up beneath the awning. He has kept his distance during the rebuild, showing up only when Hannah asked for signatures, inspections, or practical help. No cameras, no speeches, no name on the wall. The restitution fund has already helped reopen 2 other businesses and compensate dozens of families. The company is smaller now, slower, less shiny in the newspapers, but cleaner in ways Ethan understands better than profit. He has lost board members, old allies, and the comfortable illusion that good intentions are enough. Yet every time he passes the updated notebook on his desk, every name now marked with action instead of apology, he feels something steadier than power. Near closing, Hannah looks through the window and sees him across the street. For a moment, they simply look at each other through the glass and afternoon light. Then she reaches into the display case, places 1 blueberry roll in a small white box, and walks outside. "You know," she says, stopping beside him on the sidewalk, "lurking near a bakery is suspicious behavior." Ethan smiles softly. "I was waiting until it was not your busiest day. It is our opening day. That may be next month." Then I made a poor plan. Hannah hands him the box. "First batch. Slightly less burned than the ones from my apartment oven." Ethan takes it with both hands, like it is more delicate than pastry. "Thank you." His voice still does that sometimes, turns quiet around her kindness. Across from the bakery, under the same elm tree that has grown fuller with spring, sits a new wooden bench. Hannah had it placed there the week before opening. On the backrest, a small brass plate reads, "Some nights are easier when you do not have to sit alone." Ethan sees it and has to look away for a second. Hannah notices. She always notices. "Come on, just Ethan," she says gently. They cross the street together and sit with a careful space between them, though the space does not feel like a wall anymore. It feels like respect. The city moves around them in soft, ordinary sounds. Buses sighing at the curb, bicycle bells, footsteps, the bakery door opening and closing as the last customers leave with paper bags tucked under their arms. Ethan sets the white box on his knees, then reaches into his coat and removes a small wooden case. Hannah's breath catches, but he does not open it right away. "I brought you something," he says. "If it feels wrong, you can tell me, and I will put it away." Hannah looks at him, steady now. "Open it." Inside is not a diamond ring. Not yet. It is an old brass key, polished but still worn at the edges, tied with a red ribbon. Hannah stares at it, confused, then slowly understands when Ethan speaks. The contractor found it behind a loose brick during the restoration. It belonged to the original kitchen door. Your mother probably used it every morning. Hannah lifts the key with trembling fingers, and suddenly the street blurs. She can almost see Rose Miller unlocking the bakery before dawn, carrying in cold air, humming under her breath, ready to make the world less sharp for anyone who entered. Ethan's voice is low beside her. "I spent a long time thinking love meant giving someone something grand enough to prove it. You taught me that love is showing up honestly, doing what is right when no one applauds, and staying humble enough to repair what your hands once broke." Hannah looks at him then, tears on her cheeks, but no bitterness in them. Ethan opens his palm. This time, there is a ring, simple and beautiful, with a small blue stone the color of early morning over Lake Michigan. "I love you, Hannah Miller. Not because you forgave me quickly. You did not. Not because you made me feel better about myself. You made me face myself. I cannot promise a life without mistakes, but I promise never to hide from the truth again, and never to let you sit alone in it. Hannah looks at the bakery, at the bench, at the key in her hand, at the man who once arrived in her life as a secret and stayed long enough to become honest. Then she breaks the blueberry roll in half, places one piece in his hand, and smiles through her tears. My mom would say you still owe $3 for that. Ethan laughs, quiet and full, and for once the sound does not break halfway. Hannah leans closer, not into a fantasy, but into a future they have both earned slowly. Yes, she says. A simple word. A whole new door. Months later, they marry right there in front of the bakery, beneath the green awning, with neighbors holding flowers, Mrs. Alvarez crying into a napkin, and the cream-colored scarf framed on the wall inside beside the brown notebook that helped turn guilt into justice. And every morning after that, when Hannah unlocks the kitchen with her mother's old key, Ethan sets the first blueberry roll of the day on the bench outside, a quiet reminder that kindness may begin with one small offering in the rain, but when it is met with truth, courage, and love, it can become a home.